Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Black Rims. I'm Mars Girl.
I'm Josh Knight the First.
And thanks for listening in again. It's been a week.
Yep. And we're back.
Yeah, go figure, right?
Yeah. And this is episode 13. Guess what, guys? This show just hit puberty!
Woo! Alright, going to middle school, getting weird body hair, and,
And voice changes.
You should talk Shaggy, like, the whole episode.
I wasn't doing Shaggy, I was doing the... What's his face from The Simpsons? The guy who always works the drive-thru?
Same difference.
Not quite.
Shaggy never got out of... those kids are all teenagers. Alright? They are not... I don't care how adult they look. I don't care how much of a scraggly beard Shaggy has. He's still a kid. I'm gonna look this up now.
You want to see how old the guys and the girls in Scooby-Doo are?
Maybe not right this second, but
I don't
I'm
think
gonna
that's
look
the most
this up.
necessary thing. But...
We did, however, recently look up just how old all the Disney princesses were.
And the ages are somewhat disturbing.
Did you know that Snow White is 14?
Yeah, think about that. 14.
It's a little sick. I knew Ariel was 16 because she explicitly says so.
Yeah, it's in the dang song.
Well, no, it's
right?
not. No, she just says, "I'm 16 years old, Daddy. I'm not a child."
I could have sworn they mentioned it in the song.
No. Which song?
Right at the beginning when her sisters are waiting for her to come out.
Oh, that one I don't rightly remember.
I'm pretty sure they mention it.
I feel like a terrible, terrible Disney fan now because I watched it over and over again and had all the lines memorized like I did every Disney movie back in the day.
Yeah, huh?
I feel terrible.
Well, you know what your punishment is now?
No.
Telling people what our topics are.
So our first topic... later on, I'm going to be discussing the fact that Yoshitaka Amano, famed Final Fantasy artist, has already created character designs for the new Vocaloid release. Ooh.
I'm going to be talking about Guillermo del Toro working on a new project, which is actually very nice to hear about, bringing Monster to life.
And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the announcement of an upcoming announcement from Microsoft about the next Xbox.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun with this one.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
I
consoles.
Hope. Yeah, consoles.
Consoles are fun. I have fun with consoles.
I know you do.
I like games.
Yes, games, fun, buttons.
Do we have something else to talk about before all that, though?
Well, I guess we have a follow-up.
This is all on you.
Yeah, it's all on me on this one. Just a little bit ago, the soundtrack listing for the Man of Steel movie that's coming out in just a few months was put up online. And usually with most of these, some of the titles of the tracks can be, for many, spoilers. They say... The titles say pretty much what's going to happen at what point in the movie.
Also, I mean, soundtracks frequently, especially as far as video games are concerned, they are placed in order of appearance through the game. Less so with movie soundtracks, but it's not too terribly far off.
Right, and looking at this track list, an 18-track list, and kind of paralleling back to what I was talking about last week with it, the second to last track is titled, "What Are You Going to Do When You're Not Saving the World?" Which I believe would lend credence to the idea that, yes, they might just display the Clark Kent we know at the very end of the movie. Which would pretty much put the weight of the movie on him, being scraggly Clark, on The Deadliest Catch, and this guy that they will eventually call Superman, who flies around in blue tights and a cape.
Well, I suppose that makes a little bit of sense. Like, if he was just never gonna be the Clark Kent that you always knew, then that would be one thing. But considering where they're placing it, and that he would eventually become this Clark Kent that then runs around in his free time as Superman, I mean, maybe that's framed okay.
Well, I think of it this way. If he makes such a big impact, it's really the inverse of how they've always done it. He's going to make such a big impact as Superman that kind of gives him a little bit to play with in terms of where he has to go with Clark. like, okay, what was I already doing as Superman? Now I need to change that. I need to reverse it. Okay, I was standing, shoulders back, head up. All right, switch that. Frump a little, kind of shrug around, don't have very good posture, things like that. And really, when you think about it, that's not exactly stuff that any of the people playing Clark Kent actually did as far as, their physical performance was concerned, because Christopher Reeve, Dean Cain, Brandon Routh, even, Tom Welling, all of them still stood up very straight and were very noticeable, like, hey, that's a good guy, a guy who's got good confidence, a good-looking posture. And really, more often than not, whenever I read the comics, I see Clark as somebody who's, slouching and doesn't really... he's trying not to get noticed. But if you're standing, 6 foot, whatever, somebody's going to notice you just based off that.
So, what you're saying then is that, do you or do you not approve then of the inverse of what you always know? Being known as Superman first or being known as Clark Kent first?
I will at least say that it is different and that I will give it a shot. Because I can't honestly say that I've ever seen it done inversely. So, it might be a breath of fresh air. It might not work. Only, a viewing of this movie will be able to tell.
Okay, then. I'm glad we've had that discussion.
Yes, we have.
To move on to talk about these topics that we brought up right at the beginning. Yoshitaka Amano, again, he's probably best known for his character designs from the Final Fantasy series. He still to this day does the title art, did the Vampire Hunter D art, Gatchaman, a good slew of many, many different things.
I'm actually quite a fan of his work on the covers, at least because they use them for the covers of the Vampire Hunter D novels.
Mm-hmm. He continues to do Vampire Hunter D artwork, if I'm not mistaken. He's just done art show after art show touring the world. World-renowned artist
even
outside of, nerdy sort of artwork.
Right.
But he has just done, he's been commissioned to draw 3 new characters for Yamaha's new Vocaloid 3 Library Zola project. Basically, it's the newest upgraded version of the Vocaloid program. And it introduces 3 new characters, 3 new voices, in fact. One of them is quoted to be a sweet voice with an air of pathos and hidden despair.
Yeah.
Probably somebody with dead parents or something. A traditional voice with clarity and power. And the third one is a lyrical, husky voice that sounds foreign, which probably means hard R's and noticeable L's, and I don't really know. They actually don't have names for these 3 characters. However, we do have art for these 3 characters. And, even for Amano artwork, like, their legs look kind of weird. Like, they're all bent funny.
Well, really, looking at it, and this is available on Anime News Network if you guys want to look up the story. Mm-hmm. If you look at the faces, those are typical Amano faces.
Amano faces pretty much look like this all the time.
It's almost like, I don't know if you see it, but I definitely see it every time I look at it, is that you're looking at pretty much your typical Roswell Gray head, but they're squinting and you've given them hair.
And they have a little bit of dark makeup.
Yes.
They always have a little bit of dark makeup.
The heavy sort of, I guess you'd refer to it as like goth visual K style, pale face and heavy eyeliner.
See, I can't help but see with this, I imagine that these characters would look very fantasy, and yet I know the Vocaloids. They're not going to look particularly fantasy. They're going to look more techno, punked, something. I just imagine that, much in the way that Final Fantasy has utilized Yoshitaka Amano's artwork, when they eventually get to using the playable characters, they borrow elements from Amano's art.
Right.
But then don't fully utilize and make it look exactly the same. The clothes might look the same, the faces don't always tend to look the same. They don't always have the same posture. They don't end up with the same name half the time. But it's interesting that he's working on this project that a few other notable names, I don't recognize them by name, but I do recognize them by the projects that they've done and the roles that they played in them. Daisuke Asakura did Gundam Seed, Code Geass, Soul Eater, Gravitation. He composed for these particular anime titles, and Yukinojo Mori is a lyricist who worked on Detective Conan and Megazone 23 Part 3. They've worked together to collaborate the official demo songs that are included in this package. So there's some pretty interesting names that are in this. And
now here's the thing I'm wondering about. Like, Amano, like you said, world-renowned artist, working on all these classic titles, even teaming up with Neil Gaiman on some stuff. But really, when you think about it, when you think of Vocaloid, you don't necessarily think of amazing WoW art, or even lyrics for that matter. It just makes me wonder, why would they go for such a high-profile name to design these characters, when really, like you say, they're probably going to simplify it down to the most, how I would phrase it, easily cosplayable.
Because Yamaha is rich and has money. Come on, friggin' Yamaha, world-renowned for instruments and musical equipment, and so they have money. They can afford Yoshitaka Amano.
So not necessarily giraffe money, but at least, since we're talking about Amano, beads and feathers money.
Which is kind of funny, because I don't see any beads or feathers on any of these three characters. You kind of mentioned that you don't think that Vocaloid is necessarily notable for lyrics. I don't necessarily think that's true. It is entirely dependent on the musician who creates with it. In fact, the official products that Yamaha and Sega release, for the most part, they only pick the best of the best composers who have just chosen Vocaloid as their medium for building a song. And they did not have an actual singer. They had a singer that they could, temper to their liking. I think, Vocaloid isn't my favorite platform, let's say, for musical composition. However, if you don't have a vocalist and you really want to compose something, that's a good start.
I could at least see the merit in that.
And, in fact, I also don't like auto-tune. I disdain auto-tune, but I disdain it when it's used to sort of make an actual vocalist sound better than they actually are. When it comes to Vocaloid, when they're kind of already supposed to sound a little robotic, there's really, something artistic to that.
Well, because what we're talking about here, as far as Vocaloid is concerned, the voices, really all they've done is record, each syllable?
Yeah, they've taken, in some cases, I think they even they borrowed Ayumi Hamasaki for one character, and I can't recall which one that was off the top of my head. Somebody will be able to tell me later. And yeah, they will just record each syllable, a, I, u, e, o, ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, and so on and so on and so forth. And then you're basically just spelling. You're spelling in notes using this program. It's, in fact, this particular upgrade apparently makes it far easier for newbies to just jump right in and start composing as such. Unfortunately, because it's a Yamaha project, it's going to be expensive as all hell. That's why there's Utao, the freebie version. I think Utaloids are what they like to call them.
Now, is that... I'm kind of having a brain fart right now, but it wasn't Utaloid that had the gacked, voice on it, did it? Because I know he did one.
I honestly couldn't tell you.
because nothing hits my ear better than the robotic of good old Gact.
Well, if it wasn't on any of those before, either Vocaloid or Utao, then it sounds like one of these three guys, the deep-voiced dude, could potentially sound like him. Except they say he sounds foreign, so I'm not really sure. Either way, I want to see what these characters...
okay, yeah, I have it right here. It was on this last Vocaloid 2...
Kamui Gakpo?
Which is just kind of a change-up on his name, Kamui Gakto.
Yeah. So it is actually Vocaloid and not... Yeah, it says Yamaha's Vocaloid. Okay, so he did lend a voice. I'm really interested in seeing how Amano's characters will sort of morph, because I'm sure they will become very stereotypically anime in style, much like all the other Vocaloids are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very curious to see what happens with them. Also very curious to see how many people at the next convention you go to will be cosplaying as Amano-style Vocaloid characters.
Well, I think... I'm not certain if they're still doing it, but I remember specifically back in... I believe it was, 2006, 2007, Yoshitaka Amano himself came here to Texas for Onicon, and they had a Amano-only designed cosplay contest.
Yeah, and you know what?
He was the judge.
90% of that was Final Fantasy. And I was like, why are none of you Gatchaman or Vampire Hunter D?
I know. Well, no, I think there was
mad.
like one D person.
I don't think there was,
because I remember a good chunk of my friends were like people from 6 and 4.
And that, of course, was like, beads!
Feathers!
and really, like, look at everything he's got under his belt. Time Bokon. So, Time Bokon is what eventually became, Yatterman. Time Bokon started this Yatterman thing, Hutch the Honeybee.
Well, let's not shortchange him. Cashern, Tekamon, of course, Vampire Hunter D,
Mospita, that was part of what became our,
One of your favorites here, Geen Saga.
Oh, Gween Saga,
Gween
yeah.
Saga, I always mispronounce that.
Yeah, that was for, the original novels that then got interpreted into this anime series.
Right.
Which is kind of ironic, because for the anime series, then Nobuo Uematsu composed for it. So here's just Final Fantasy artists all over the place on Gween Saga. But, I mean, really, there were all these different things that those costumers could have picked from, and it was like 90% Final Fantasy. And I was sitting there looking at his face, and I was seriously wondering, like, are you sick of this yet, dude? I was really wondering, because there were, like, 7 different Tinas, or Terras.
Yeah, that's right. Terra, Locke. I think one of my good friends was Locke. Who else was there?
Rydia was like driven into the ground.
Yes.
So, you know, I'm not sure whether or not, maybe I am hoping that people jump on the Amano Vocaloid thing. Maybe just a little bit, if only to take the edge off of, I'm doing Amano Final Fantasy cosplay. Like, it's enough. Okay, we get it. You're a cosplayer.
Got it.
You're awesome. Everyone else has done
just
it, though.
A little side thing, because I'm looking at the list of he's designed for every single Final Fantasy.
At least the title.
At least the promotional artwork. Mm-hmm. But then I see here in the credits, at least on the wiki, that he's listed as doing it also for Final Fantasy Versus 13. I thought that got canceled.
No, it's just sitting in production hell.
But what's her lightning? But there's a...
Like, we don't even know if it has anything to do with the original 13 cast. Like, from what we heard back in the day, it was supposed to be in the same universe, but, like, not at the same time or with the same cast or having anything to do with it.
So what you're telling me, basically, is that there's a pocket universe out there right now where some other version of Vanille and Lightning are there with beads and feathers.
Well, it sort of exists. the logo for 13 as it is.
No, but I mean, like, full art renderings of these characters, not just the logo.
That might be possible. In fact, he did full artwork for Final Fantasy 7 and 10, and he didn't design those characters. It was Tetsuya Nomura's character designs.
But he interpreted them.
He did do an interpretation of them. He also did an interpretation of the 10-2 versions, which, quite frankly, made Yuna look very mannish despite her clothing. But,
Well, then there was how girlish friggin' Sephiroth looked, but... Yeah, that's
don't you mean that's all the time? Because that's all the time.
Yeah, I was about to say, but that's neither here nor there, considering how Sephiroth looks most of the time.
In any case, like I said before, I'd be interested in seeing new Amano cosplayers, and I'd be interested in seeing how this gets interpreted into your stereotypical, always anime-style Vocaloid thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Then I guess it's my turn.
Please.
Okay. Well, just yesterday, this was reported on multiple news sites, Anime News Network and SuperheroHype.com. Noted director Guillermo... I can never say his name when I'm talking fast. Guillermo del Toro.
It's Spanish, right?
Yeah.
Guillermo. The
Guillermo.
two L's would not be L's.
Right. Well, point being, Del Toro. Del Taco. is, currently he's working on finishing up post-production for Pacific Rim, which of course I'm looking forward to seeing. And this guy knows his stuff. He knows horror, and he knows how to tell a good story. If you've seen any of his movies, Pan's Labyrinth, the Hellboy movies, he knows how to get his stuff done. And he knows how to adapt stuff, obviously, too, having gone through those things. Well, just yesterday it was announced that he's going to be teaming up with screenwriter Stephen Thompson, who has done writing for both Doctor Who and Sherlock, to adapt this manga by Naoki Urasawa, his title of Monster.
I'm having a hard time picturing all of those names working together on Monster.
I'll explain it. Like I said, Guillermo knows how to tell a story, and he knows when to spot a good story. That's why he's also talking about doing the proposed Justice League Dark movie, which is some of the more not quite on the beaten path characters that some people might not know, but he likes telling those dark stories. And if you know anything about Monster, and I guess I'll go ahead and explain for everyone listening, Monster in and of itself is a very dark story. And seeing that he's teaming up not just with a Doctor Who writer, but Sherlock, which is also very much a mystery show, that feeds into Monster as well. Now, for those of you who don't know, Monster, like I said, is from Naoki Urasawa, the guy who brought you 20th Century Boys.
Yeah, I love his stories.
I love his stories. And this story, I remember watching it years ago when it first came out. I found out about the show before I read the manga, and both, of course, got released over here. But I'll give you guys the basic rundown of the plot here. So there's this doctor, a Japanese doctor by the name of Kenzo Tenma, and he's, think like, to a certain extent, like House, but without, the dependence on pills. He's just a genius doctor, genius surgeon. And he goes to Germany to continue his studies, to be a doctor overseas. And he ends up getting a lot of press for being a good surgeon over there. And he gets higher and higher up the ranks, and he ends up proposing to and getting engaged to the head doctor of the hospital that he works at, his daughter. And, everything is going great for him. And what ends up happening is one day he has a choice to make between two patients. There is an old man who came in first, and he was, I think, hurt on a construction accident. And he's like, okay, well, I can save him pretty easy. But right before he's about to go in and operate on this guy, a famous opera singer in town ends up having a heart attack, and he needs an operation. And so the head of the hospital, this person who will eventually be his father-in-law, tells him, all right, I know you've got this old man here to work on, but really we want to do more high-profile things and make the hospital look good, so you're going to work on this other guy instead. And against his own will, Tenma ends up working on this guy, and what ends up happening is he saves the opera singer, but the old man dies. And he's kind of beating himself up for that. It's not quite the place he wants to be at. So the next day, as luck would have it, he gets another chance. Same exact thing. Horrible thing happens. He finds out that there's been this horrible mass murder at somebody's house. And there are two twins, a girl and a boy. The girl's comatose. The boy has a bullet lodged in his head. He can either operate on the boy, or he can operate on the mayor of the town, who's got a brain aneurysm. And he's like, you know what? I already took the high-profile one last time. I'm going to do what's right for me. I'm going to operate on the boy. And what ends up happening is, long story short, that's the worst decision he could have made, not just because it gets him fired, for one thing, or demoted at the least. What you end up finding out is that the young boy is the one who did the mass murdering. He's this psychopath who has some screw loose, and you end up finding out through the story that he is, to a certain extent, like the Antichrist. I mean, not literally, but he is what the title refers to. He's the monster. So what ends up happening later on in life is that this boy who he saved ends up getting back out into society and starts killing again, and now Tenma, the doctor, feels responsible for bringing this kid in because it was his choice that led him to, save this boy's life, but then that boy ends up killing and getting better at it as he grows older.
How much of that was massive spoiler, Josh?
Actually, none of it. That is all the first 2 episodes.
Okay. Spent an awful lot of time on it, that's why I'm asking.
I know, unfortunately it takes a lot of setup, but I will say right now, like you said, you've read 20th Century Boys, you know how this guy can tell a story.
Yeah.
This story went on for, I believe it was 18 volumes. The anime itself went on for 71 episodes. That's no small feat in the world of, a quick 12-episode, 26-episode run. This story, much like, I don't even know what you would compare it to over here, like, say, The Killing, or shows like that, these big overarching horror stories, because there are some horror elements to it. There's a lot of death, there's a lot of political intrigue, things like that, and I'm very happy to be seeing this come to pass, because of the fact, just a few years ago, New Line Cinema had optioned Monster to be turned into a movie. Just one movie. But the thing about it is that they kind of, got dragged down into what we refer to as development hell, and the project wasn't really getting off the ground. Del Toro found out about it, and he was like, you know what, this would serve better as a series. I mean, heck, look at the manga, look at the show. It had to run out to tell this story. And the thing I like about it so much is that the show, the anime adaptation, is almost shot for shot the manga. You have a lot of adaptations where, they like to omit this chapter, you've got filler. There is no filler in this. It is pure story.
Well, it's how many episodes?
71 episodes.
Pure story for 71 episodes.
Yes. Pure story for 71 episodes.
71's kind of an odd number. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, it's an odd number, but how many shows do you know out there? We live in a world of, One Piece, Dragon Ball Z, you've got these giant arcs of... You can skip a couple episodes, but you still haven't missed too incredibly much.
Uh-huh.
Whereas here, it's psychological, it's got horror elements, and what I like about it also so much is that it's very much based in reality. Nobody's got superpowers. This is all stuff that could have happened. Even the stuff they go back into in the kid who we end up finding out his name is Johan. Johan's backstory is something that could have actually happened, ties to Germany and eugenics experiments, things like that. I think this is awesome. I think it's a good chance for something, again, to be put on TV, because I'm always for whatever gets a good story across.
I'm just curious how all of these creators are going to make this happen. It's just interesting that all of these names are coming together at all, if you ask me. And I just wonder how it even came about as such.
Well, as far as I can tell here, it's like I said, Actually, according to Anime News Network, Del Toro talked to Urasawa himself because, they had to go through him to get the right... I mean, specifically New Line. New Line Cinema had to talk to Urasawa to talk about, hey, can we turn this property into a movie? And then Del Toro talked to him as well, saying, hey, a movie wouldn't do this justice. Let's turn it into a series. And he agreed. So, again, we have direct ties to the creator here. And this isn't some sort of George Lucas case where if the creator's involved, oh god, run for the hills. No, this is a guy who knows his stuff, so having the creator in on this is the best thing you could have happen. Now, as for what network...
Yay!
As for what network they would put this on, I'm not sure. I would think it would have a home on, say, something like AMC, where they show stuff like that, like Mad Men, or...
I would say AMC, or, it wouldn't be basic cable.
No, you're thinking, like, HBO, Showtime, AMC, something like that. Probably be the best place to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when the dub came out, they were showing it on the Sci-Fi Channel for a bit.
That's right, I almost forgot about that.
Yes,
the Sci-Fi Channel used to be cool like that.
Yeah, it used to be cool like that.
Before it was sci-fi.
Yes, before it became sci-fi and forgot about their anime. Oh, that was unfortunate. But yeah, that run was at least a good 3 years ago now. So, enough people could find out about this. If you're interested, I believe that that Viz might have these episodes available for
You're
for
reading
streaming.
this on Anime News Network too, also, right?
Yes. The manga is out there. You can go ahead and find
Manga's
that.
been out for a long time.
For a long time. And Viz released the show in a box set. So I do highly recommend anybody listening, go out, find out about this title. You won't regret it. It's honestly one of the best reads I've ever had.
Well, that is quite the promotion, Josh.
Well, yes, I don't read incredibly much literature over here, but this played out exactly like, any sort of novel or long sort of novels that you could read over here, like, say, I would make the comparison to, like, Harry Potter in terms of how many side characters you get introduced to that have relevance to the plot.
You say literature as though this manga could be considered literature.
I do honestly consider it literature from how in-depth he goes into the story.
Well, okay.
I mean, you still read it. Does that not make it literature? I mean, yes, I understand it's in visual format, but we've got visual novels over here.
No, I don't think that constitutes as literature. I think it constitutes as reading material. I don't think it constitutes as literature. Unless you consider, leaflets and pamphlets to be literature, as some people phrase those things.
Well, it's at least quality writing, at the very least.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, so, yes, definitely keeping my ears to the ground on this one. I do hope that they turn it into a series rather than just a movie or two.
That would be cool. I'd watch it.
I would definitely watch it.
Okay.
All right.
Well, so moving on from that, one thing that we both want to talk about now is that Microsoft has confirmed that they're gonna confirm
on May 21st.
this next generation Xbox. They're gonna unveil it on Tuesday, May 21st at 10 a.m. Pacific. So here in our time, I guess that's noon?
Something like
because
that.
we're Central Time.
So, ladies and gentlemen, start your speculation engines.
So I'm sure they will live stream it, as they always do. Yeah, it's going to be live on at least Xbox.com, on Xbox Live, on Spike TV. They didn't themselves unveil too much further than that. However, lots of information appears to have been leaked recently and over time about what might be in this new next box.
Yeah, so first off, before we get into that, what do we call this thing? Because I remember when we were talking not too long ago about, the PlayStation 4 before it was announced, we ended up, what did you end up calling it, the Forbis?
Yeah, because it was originally under the development name of the Orbis.
You're right.
Yeah, so I just
So
called
we
it
need
the
a funny
PS
name.
Forbis. It already had its own developer's name, and its developer's name was Durango. of course, that'll go away.
Yeah, they're not going to call this thing... That's just the code name.
Yeah.
We got to call it something else. What are we talking here?
Why does it matter what we call it? It's not going to stay that.
Yeah, I know. It'll probably stay that way for a month, and then we'll have to go by the literal name. But for right now...
The X Durango.
The X Durango. No, I would think more like what the next box.
The next
720?
box Durango. Come on, I kept
the Canyonero.
Canyonero. Come on, I kept the Orbis thing inside PS4bis.
Okay. So then this will be the Xbox 720 Rango. The Xbox Rango?
Screw it.
All right, whatever.
This isn't worth it.
Fine.
There are some things that we're pretty positive about, and by we I say Kotaku. I mean Kotaku, and they're saying we know things like Kinect will almost definitely be used, like, all the time, like, totally integrated with it.
Stupid! Oh, I'm sorry, I got allergies.
It's the future, Josh. The future is motion control.
Sure it is.
Motion and voice control.
You just keep telling yourself that.
The next Xbox will have, if you want traditional controllers, they'll
Well, I can just plug in my old 360 controller,
Nope.
right? What?
We're going to have very similar controllers to the last generation. However, the last generation's controllers will not function with this machine. Again, these are all rumors, but these are almost certain fact
So
rumors.
like a credible rumor.
That's what these appear to be. It's going to be fairly powerful. Seems almost equally as powerful as the PS4 looks to be. 64-bit CPU, running at 1.6 gigahertz, DirectX 11, custom hardware blocks, 8 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM, 500 gig hard drive, built-in Wi-Fi, uses Blu-ray discs, which was just about the 360's one last hindrance, the one thing that was really holding it back in comparison to the PlayStation 3.
You mean not being able to
do Blu-ray?
Well, that was also the Wii's problem, wasn't it?
Well, no, the Wii's problem was that it was not even an HD console.
Right. However,
no,
the Wii still managed to sell quite a bit of units.
That's because the Wii was for casual family gamers, and it sold 80 bajillion units because, you know, families were like, I'm waggling a remote, I'm playing a video game, look at me play your video box.
Yeah, but you think about it though, Xbox now, we're getting we're getting whatever this next thing is going to be called. I'm just going to refer to it as the 720. We're getting this 720 announcement, you know, in a couple of weeks, but think about how long the 360 on its own was able to last.
Oh yeah, it was the first out the door in this particular generation of consoles. All I'm saying...
And the longest lasting.
Well, you could say the longest lasting, but it's pretty much just been neck and neck with the PS3 for that reason. What I'm saying about Blu-ray, now granted, Blu-ray was all Sony's big old thing. Take, for example, Final Fantasy XIII. You compare its release on the 360 to its release on the PlayStation 3, the whole game was able to fit on a Blu-ray PS3 disc, whereas the 360 version had to be broken up into 3 discs.
Right.
Blu-ray just plain holds more data. So, it was really one of the only things holding it back as far as what its hardware limitations were concerned with. That and the way it ventilated. It ventilated really badly, therefore Red Ring of Death all the time. Mine red ringed. I had to send it back in, and then I missed my 360 for a couple weeks.
No, I understand that. Well, that should be something they fix right off the bat, of course.
Oh, I don't know about that, because Microsoft managed to write their information saying that, oh, you purchased this 360 as is, basically. Legalese, statingly, it's written as a feature rather than a hindrance or a
so
failure.
So it's a feature that basically my Xbox can crap out on me.
Yeah, basically you can't sue them for red rings.
But why would you, like, make an excuse for breakage? I mean, granted, it's...
To make more money!
Yeah, but... Okay, you're talking for a second about, you know, how they're coming up with all the things they'll be able to need to compete. I think another thing that a lot of people seem to overlook is foreign markets, as far as the Xbox is concerned.
Well, yeah, because in previous generations, the Xbox just did not do so hot worldwide. Well, really, most specifically, Japan.
Exactly. Because Japan, they've had... You know, you've got your two, basically, Asian-based company. You've got Nintendo, and you've got Sony in there with PlayStation. They play both of those, no problem. Then the Xbox comes along, and they pretty much rejected it outright.
It took a while, but a couple years ago, it was like, yeah, we don't really want the Xbox anymore, and we're not going to support it, we're not going to make more of it, we're not going to sell it anymore.
Now, could it be argued then that was a matter of, I guess you'd call it brand loyalty, or maybe even nationalism?
It could be both of those things, although I think there's a third thing involved, which is Microsoft themselves is a very American country, and they know how to market toward Americans and maybe other Western similar-minded markets.
Like, say, what, England?
Sure, yeah. But they didn't really know how to market in Japan. That's a different kind of culture, and they were marketing toward them as they typically would Americans. And Japan
just didn't fly.
It just doesn't work like that. And Japan just didn't see what was so great about the 360, and it's like, well, why should I even bother getting it on the 360? Most of my games are coming out on the PS3 anyway. So, there were, a few JRPGs coming out on the 360.
Right, like Eternal Sonata, I remember was one.
And, Mistwalker had been releasing their games on the 360. I guess perhaps that's the reason why they ended up going with Nintendo rather than Microsoft, because there's just no more Japanese support with Microsoft. When it came to their release of The Last Story, man.
Well, even before that with why can't I remember?
Is this another Mistwalker game?
Yes. Before Last Story. Really sad.
Lost Odyssey? It came out for the 360. I don't know what you're saying to me.
Yeah, Lost Odyssey. Yeah, I got Lost Odyssey and Last Story mixed up,
Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey came out on the 360.
Right.
What I'm saying is that The Last Story came out on the Nintendo Wii. And I believe that it suffered because of the limitations of the Wii. Therefore, you didn't.
I would agree with that.
You didn't have a nice, big, broad, open world where you could do your.
It was very enclosed. It was just that one town you're running around in.
For the most part, except for this one time, you go to this other island, and you don't actually get to do the traveling yourself. You get the narrator saying, "And then Zale went to this island."
Yes.
He spent lots of time there while they walked around and talked for a while. And then suddenly, bad things happened.
I love that narrator. Captain Obvious narrator.
And it's just like, come on, man, you can either tell me what happened or let me play the game to find out what happened. And I think that's because they had to put it on the Wii. And previously, Mistwalker had been supported by Microsoft, but there's no more Microsoft doing game junk over in Japan. Part of me wonders whether or not with this new console, Japan's even gonna care. Like, are they even gonna want it? Are they...
Well, really what they're gonna need, as far as that's concerned, no amount of hardware will match up with a game that they will want to see over there. I would think they would have to at least start out with something specifically solely for this quote-unquote 720 that they would want to play.
What they need is friggin' Dragon Quest. It's... 'cause it is the title that shuts Japan down on release day. It is the title that you can get fired for if you don't come into work the day it comes out.
Well, that's primarily what, for the DS?
For Nintendo
3DS.
consoles.
Yeah, for Nintendo consoles.
In fact, what am I thinking? 10? Yeah, 10 is online.
Right.
And it's on the Wii. And it functions perfectly fine on the Wii because Dragon Quest somehow, in all of Square Enix's stupidity, it manages to survive, and even while it goes online, it manages to retain its Dragon Questiness. Mm-hmm. And it does not change, it still functions just as it needs to. It doesn't need to look flashy, it just needs to look like, hey, you still look like Akira Toriyama drew you. That's all they need.
Getting back to it then, you would say that this next Xbox would need some sort of MMO or
No, what
RPG?
I'm saying is they need something as powerful as, say, Dragon Quest.
So basically you're saving an already established title.
Yeah, and it would have to be exclusive to the new Xbox. Otherwise, they'll just be like, we already have our Japanese consoles. Why would we get it on your foreign console? And even if it did come out multi-platform, then Microsoft needs to learn how to market in foreign markets. If they just keep trying to market to the Japanese as though they think that the Japanese want to be American, it will never work.
Well, that's kind of a weird kind of concept in and of itself, because to a certain extent there is that sort of leaning towards Western ideas, but as far as the gaming is concerned, no, yeah, they're still very loyal to Nintendo and Sony.
Very much so, and, like, I know it's going to sound really stereotypical, but face the facts and face the numbers. They primarily buy within their own country, their own country's products. And there is brand loyalty, and there is, like, Nippon Ichi loyalty. And I'm not talking about the game company Nippon Ichi. I'm talking about the we're Japan and we're number one mentality. That just plain exists, just like we have America, F yeah mentality.
Right.
They have nationalism just like we do. And then on top of that, you can't help the fact that you've got this other big, brazen American company storming in with their American concepts like, play our first-person shooters, and Japan is all
exactly what I was going to bring up.
First-person shooters? We don't care about first-person shooters.
First-person shooters, they won't even let us own guns.
Now, Japan thinks guns are cool, but it's still like, first-person shooters are kind of a weird concept. Actually, there was a really cool Half-Life arcade game.
What?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I didn't actually get to sit down in it, but I watched somebody play it. You sit in it, and you're in
like
this
the Gundam Pod game, or
sort of yes, sort of no. You have one screen directly in front of you, and you sit in a little orange bubble. I think it moved a little bit, and you play with other people. I think via internet connection, because their arcade machines are awesome like that, and they actually connect to other arcades around Japan.
That's nice.
So you could do this multiplayer, first-person sort of a mission, but I don't think it lasted very long.
They should release that over here.
Because I remember that when I went in, like, 2008, and then I never saw it again when I went back in 2010. It was gone. However, Gundam Pod Game, I saw it in 2008, and it was still flourishing a couple of years later. Now, granted, it's been a few more years, so they're probably not doing very much with it anymore, but I still think the game is amazing.
So as far as succeeding over in Japan, there needs to be less of a reliance on first-person shooter titles in Japan.
Yeah, and that, unfortunately, especially at the time, Microsoft still just sort of carried that atmosphere of, hey, these are the kind of titles our platform caters to.
Right.
After all, I still had friends in high school who called the original Xbox the Halo box.
Well, I remember those days.
I mean, that's what it was. Halo made Xbox. Let's give it credit where credit is due.
Well, let's also be clear on that. It was two things that got us to the 360 in the first place. One was Halo, and two was Bill Gates digging his heels in and putting his money behind it, saying, no, this is gonna work.
Oh yeah, because the first Xbox, it made it, but it scraped by. But then Bill Gates was all like, well, you know what? I still want a foot in the gaming market, and I'm going to make it work. So I'm going to throw my money behind it, even though we're kind of sluggishly trailing behind. And that was after the first Xbox generation. Then you get to the 360 generation, and it's like neck and neck. Who wins, 360 or PS3?
Like, they gave Sony a run for their money.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I even sided with Microsoft for a very long time before purchasing a PS3. And I only purchased a PS3 for, as stupid as it sounds, Fist of the North Star.
I don't blame you necessarily.
And because of the fact that it was the only console that was going to let me play foreign games.
Right.
Like there was a legit need for it, but I held out long. I held out for years before purchasing a PS3. And I went for the 360 because it had games that I cared about coming out on it anyway. It was like, well, they're coming out on the PS3 and the 360. Whatever. Mistwalker, though, I got an Xbox 360 because of Blue Dragon. And it was it was Xbox 360 exclusive. And then anything else that might have been multi-platform, I already had a 360. Why should I go to the PS3? Of course, that's my mentality, and other people have other games that do exactly the opposite for the PS3, thus that's the reason why they stuck with the PS3. Or their friends all decided, hey, let's all play our multiplayer games on the PS3, or hey, let's all play our multiplayer games on the Xbox 360. It was kind of neck and neck.
And this is, of course, without the use of, well, not even use the development of a handheld system like Nintendo or Sony had.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Nintendo has had just years upon years of handhelds under their belt, and Sony, well, the PSP was a success. The Vita is getting there. They're working on it.
Hopefully.
But, you know, I do kind of still want one.
Me, not as much so more.
I don't want it as much as I wanted the 3DS, but I like Phantasy Star.
Yeah, and Monster Hunter.
But that's Nintendo and
yeah. So really, we see that they're going to have the hardware. They're going to need the software to back it up.
Well, yeah, they need games to prove that their hardware even means anything. Because it's always... I think most people would care about this primarily. Is the gameplay and story, if your game revolves around the story, are they good? Followed by, does it look pretty? I think most gamers are like that. I know you get some of those rotten kids who are like, but it looks like crap.
Well, the other thing, too, is, specifically for the console, like, is the gameplay for this system unique? Like, is it not just copying all the other ones? But what is its own thing without being too gimmicky and hokey?
Mm-hmm. Which, admittedly, with the integration of the Kinect, it could get hokey.
That's my primary concern as far as that goes.
Either way, by this point, we're going to have to see it in action, and we're not really going to see it until the 21st. So, I guess everybody stay focused until the 21st. Keep waiting and see if you hear any drops of anything, but
there are there's no cries of shut up and take my money just yet.
No, not at all just yet. Not me for this thing, not me for the PS4. I'm not yet prepared for the next generation of consoles. In fact, I think that this generation of consoles could still continue, but apparently the industry doesn't think the same thing.
Nope. They just want more money.
And we'll give it to them.
I know you will.
Because they'll quit producing games for the current generation anyway.
And that's really where the force comes from.
That's about all, really.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I'm done. I'm tired. I'm thirsty.
Yeah, you go get some water.
Okay, I'm gonna go. You tell everybody goodbye.
Okay, well, thank you guys for hanging out with us for another week. As always, you can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Josh Knight First.
I'm at Mars Girl Pride!
Yeah, come back over here and say that.
I'm at Mars Girl Prod.
Thank you. And this has been episode 13 of Beyond the Black Rims. I'm Josh Knight the First.
I'm Mars Girl.
And until next time.
See you later.
Bye. 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 Bye.